Okay. So we're on hold. I mean, that's okay. I'm just trying to figure out who's on first. Pardon? But and she can't talk because I'm going to look at you guys. Do you guys care to hear, after you've read this, the logistics of how they did it and what they did and that? That's what I thought. Was it self-explanatory, and you're anxious to go ahead and leave? If I mean, not to do something that we don't need to, that we do need to do, but let's not. Yeah. We still on hold? Can we just tell the public that this is up on our website and go from there? So we're not going, we're already 10 minutes late. Does that sound okay, or are we up? We're good? Okay. Do we call a work session to order? Okay, Melissa, would you want to call us to order?
Mayor Mark Sukup.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rick Collins. Here. Councilmember Aaron Pearson.
Here.
Councilmember Lisa Lake. Here. Councilmember Brett Hansen.
Here.
So with that, I think you wanted to do some introductory, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Mayor and Council, thanks for coming in so early on Tuesday. You wouldn't know it from looking out the window, but it's only 3 o'clock. It almost looks like 6 o'clock out the window.
It's raining.
But I'll give just a few brief introductory comments, try and walk us through the agenda and what we hope to accomplish tonight as a staff. So first, we will have a brief presentation regarding the community survey. Our real hope, Mark, to your point earlier, is we want you folks to be able to have a discussion. Our hope is the staff to get some feedback from you all as it relates to those survey results. We also have Melissa Buck, who is here. We had a request for her to come to be prepared to speak to the town's cash position relative to debt as it relates to some of these projects. So the hope is the community survey discussion will bring forward potentially some projects we'd want to look at, and to have her help talk about the financing of those projects. And then we will kick into the budget itself. We have a draft budget before you. You'll recall at our last budget work session, we hammered out details on the personnel, a 5-year projection on personnel. And the big theme there was an increase in town staff as the community grows. and a reduction or reducing our reliance on outside contracted help. So that's a focus for the personnel side of things. We also laid out a CIP. We understand based on the discussion tonight, there might be some changes tonight. So the big thing that staff is hoping to take from tonight's discussion would be any specific changes you would want to see in the 22 budget so that the draft budget can become one step closer to final. And so with that, I'll keep my remarks to just that and as brief as I can, and I'm going to turn it over to, are we going straight to Megan?
And then I'm going to turn it over to Brooke Mitchell to walk you through the survey results and the methodology that was used just very quickly. And then we'll come back to me and I'll talk through some of kind of the high level stuff that we saw in analyzing the data and are going to present to you for discussion as kind of recommendations.
So Megan and Brooke, I'm going to interject here. Let's start with logistics, the first part. So we do not want to, I've polled the council. We don't want to go through methodology we can read, and we don't need to go through the introduction. We can read that too. So what we'd like, I think there's a couple things probably in logistics and then go forward from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, as you all know, we did the community survey here in August and September, and these are the results that we are just going to real quickly walk through with you and then kick it over to conversation with you about next steps. So with that, Brooke, I will ask you to jump in and start walking folks through what we've got here. And if you would like me to advance the slide, just let me know.
Maybe we even just start on that logistics.
Yeah,
slide.
let's just start with the logistics slide.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sounds good. I could hear a little bit over on your end. So it sounds like you just kind of want to breeze through, take a little a brief introduction to the survey. So thank you guys for letting me come in. I was invited to come out and present in person as much as I would like to do that. I am in Vermont. I'm with the Center for Research and Public Policy. I was one of the project directors on this project. So I just want to introduce the survey. We did it was a long time in the coming. I know there were a few things that popped up to get this survey going, such as a pandemic. So we finally got it off the ground. We released a survey that everyone had input on the survey. We released it via postcard, EDDM, every door direct mailer to reach every household in the town of Timnath, Colorado. It was available online and in hard copies were available. So we received 919.
Brooke,
Sorry?
I'm going to interject. So you're telling us stuff we already know.
Okay.
So, if you could start with logistics, that'd be great.
Sure. Do you want to just move into the highlighted results?
Well, there's a couple things you might want to say on logistics. It's up to you. And then go to the results would be great.
Sure. So, we received 919 results, which is a great result, a completion rate for a town of your size. It produced a margin of error of 3%, plus or minus 3% at a 95% confidence level. And so that was a really good output from your town. Megan, if you could move it forward. Great, thank you. So I did want to just highlight a few things, overall quality of life. Your town produced a 98.6%. That was very good or good finding. And that is an amazing response. We do surveys all throughout the country. Just to kind of put you in perspective, we did a 2018 and 2020 survey of Larimer County. They did a community survey. Their overall quality of life of very good and good was 95.6. A 2019 survey of Gilpin County produced a 96% quality of life. So that kind of gives you the idea that you're for a small town, you're pretty high up there, especially in relations to other counties near you. You did just the town, but that kind of gives you perspective of recent surveys that we've actually done with other places within Colorado, and we certainly find that quality of life is a lot higher in Colorado versus more suburban urban areas. You'll expect them to be as low as could be in the 60s 70s, so that's right on par and very good as well. Megan? So we did want to just highlight that we did ask 2 open-ended questions in the survey. Basically, we asked, one question was what respondents really liked best about living in Timnath, as well as what were any issues or problems that they are concerned about within living in Timnath. And these really they kind of confirmed the rest of the results throughout the survey. They follow everything, and the comments are what they like best. They centered around the town being friendly, small town feel, nice neighbors, peaceful, walkable, small size, rural. It really fits in with a high quality of life as well. Things that were of concern of residents, increased construction, traffic concerns, congestions. Lack of planning, lack of amenities such as restaurants and grocery stores was named a lot. Property taxes are too high. So those are some of the results that were just kind of popping up a little bit more often as well. But they really kind of centered, as you saw those results show themselves in the quantitative section of the survey as well. Megan? So we just asked, how satisfied were respondents with services provided by the Timnath government. So we took, this one actually highlights, so the blue bar is without unsure responses. Unsure was a response. The orange graph is with unsures. So we try to focus on the results without unsures, because you get a feel of those that do have an opinion. That is what they feel. So of those that did have an opinion about how satisfied they were with services, police, parks, and town events were high up on the scale, and then dwindling down to snow removal, community development surveys, transportation services. Thank you. So we also asked respondents how important it was to them that the town worked towards offering 2 new conceptual facilities in Timnath. So we generally find in the importance was a 1 through 10 scale, and then we generally take 1 through 4 to be of importance of respondents. So that's why you'll see important is 1 through 4 on the left side, and 35.6% of respondents found that it was generally important to them to have a municipal sports complex field. And then 50% felt that it was important to them to have an indoor recreation center as well. Thank you. So we also asked, how interested they were in seeing the town of Timnath to allocate significant resources to 3 new enhanced services. So you'll find that, there is a clear difference here. Folks that indicated they were very or somewhat interested. 81% were very or somewhat interested in improved access to high-speed internet or broadband services. Less than that, the library branch, and even further less than that, improved transit. So you get a clear indication of what some of the respondents are, or what the respondents are interested in. Thank you. So it was also asked how important it would be for the town to use existing revenue to further develop municipal parks and trails. So again, on a scale of 1 to 10, we asked importance, and in the blue, you'll see importance of a rating of 1 through 4. And you'll find that trail construction throughout town was, about 2/3 of of the respondents found that to be important, dwindling down to about a quarter of the respondents felt it was important to develop Wild Wing Park. Thank you. So this was interesting. So you provided 2 potential ballot questions to the town, and one was for the support of or opposition of town limits and for campaign contribution limits. So, you know, you have about over 50% of your respondents state that they strongly support either of them. So that's 53.3% for term limits and 58.1% of campaign contribution limits. The way we look at it, you know, we usually combine strongly support and somewhat support because that will show you that there is support. So that's above 80% support for both of those. So if you were to go to ballot, you kind of have an idea of where those would fall out. There's not a whole lot of opposition there. You'll see just over 10% for term limits. Again, just over 10% for campaign contribution limits that were, or no, sorry, not even, I was reading that wrong. So just over 7% and just over 5% for opposition. So I think you have a clear understanding of where the town falls with those two. Next. And then, lastly, we asked about, and again, these are just some highlighted results. There were a few other questions, but these were, I know we wanted to keep the presentation a little brief, but this is just another highlight. Lastly, we asked, we reminded the town that there were an array of events, community events in town, and we wanted to see how important those were to them or their respective families. So you'll find that the large scale community-wide events, just over 3/4 of the respondents indicated that they were on a scale of, again, 1 to 10, they gave it a rating of 1 to 4. And that's when we generally say it's important to your respondents. So you'll see, again, over 3/4 of respondents, and then just over 2/3 felt small neighborhood gatherings were just as important as well. And 45.5% for recreation activity-based events. That's not to say that they're not that important. Folks generally found them important still. So it just kind of puts them in an order for you as well. But again, large scale community-wide events were of most important of those offered selections. So that's just kind of a really quick highlight of some of the results in the survey. Again, there were some more questions asked, and these were just kind of the ones that really stood out a little bit to us, and I know to the folks over at Slate Communications as well too. So thank you for letting me kind of do the little highlight for you. And if you have any other questions, I'm here as well. And I'll
Brooke,
hand it over to Megan.
Brooke, do you mind hanging on while we discuss a little bit, and then we
Absolutely. I'm here as long as you need me. So
Great. I don't think it'll be very long, but I think it'd be worthwhile for you to hang on if you wouldn't mind.
absolutely, I'm here.
Okay, Megan.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Brooke. And so now this just leads us to the conversation starter for you all. And as we parse through the data that Brooke just presented and the full report, we kind of sat together as a staff to come up with some ideas for you all to consider moving forward as action items in response to the citizen sentiment expressed in the survey. So I'm just going to run through these. I'll go through all 6 and then kick it to each of you, kick it to all of you to kind of talk through each one, if that sounds good. So the first recommendation we thought you all would be worth discussing investing in increased broadband capacity and leveraging American Rescue Plan funds. Clearly from the survey, with 81% of folks saying we need improved broadband, we thought that would be an easy one to kick to you for conversation. Next, talking about. Let's go in. You want to do them one at a time? Let's go into that. I'm not a techie, so I don't know exactly what that means. I'll leave it to our tech guy a little bit here because everybody's going to say phone service
Please talk into the
Everybody's going to
mic.
say phone service, Wi-Fi and everything is a real problem in the area because of cell towers and that. And we're basically then also throwing out the broadband like Fort Collins did. And I don't know what the cost of that is, if it's outrageous or not. And then you throw on top of that the potential of some people say, oh, you got to go to 5G. And then others are saying, no, you don't want to go to 5G. It's harmful. So can somebody talk a little bit about broadband or Wi-Fi? Are we talking about the same thing?
Don, do you want to?
I can jump in for just a second.
All right.
And I will be the first to admit, tech is also not necessarily my wheelhouse. What I would recommend is that you could direct us as a staff to start to look into those things more and bring in folks who are more up to speed on those sorts of things. I think we do have a potential avenue to move forward, potentially in partnership with Fort Collins. They've been through a process and they've gone through some speed bumps, we'll say, but I think they might be able to help provide an extension of their service to us after having gone through some growing pains. I don't feel comfortable quoting a price. We're not far enough along in that sort of a relationship, but a direction from council for us to pursue that would be a good first step. Relatively low or no cost to just initiate that and find out some of our options. You know, I don't know how far we want to get down the technical discussion tonight. I don't feel like we have a lot of subject matter experts in the room, but again, just a simple direction for us to go ahead and pursue that would be a great first step.
Was that a double clutch?
I might add on that. I just don't want to see us take down a path and get expectation raised up like this, like with transportation, where we're very limited on what we can actually do to improve the transportation problems that we see right now, and they're going to get worse.
So to that point, I think that's a great comment. And I think there are a potential couple of paths that are very realistic for us to go down. So on the one hand, we have a potential partner in Fort Collins. On the other hand, we have Windsor, who is going down a path in a different way to work with a private provider. And so I think we have a couple of avenues that are realistic for us. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself until we've had a chance to vet that more as a staff.
Brett.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm comfortable with the recommendation that we at least direct staff to come back with options and look at some of the regional partnerships, because there are a lot of existing networks we can jump into that will make the cost a little bit more manageable. I know I've talked a little bit about it with Aaron over the preceding months, and it's certainly rough numbers, but they seem potentially manageable. And I just emphasize that the question that was on the survey was, do you want the town to spend significant resources on this? And 85% of the town said yes. So I think we certainly got a clear mandate to explore it and see what our options are. And one question I would have is, I believe in the past, towns had to put a ballot question on getting authorization from the community to even explore any kind of municipal broadband. Is that still the case? Do we need a ballot question in the spring is what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, Brett. I actually was going to jump in, but you teed me up perfect. So there is a requirement. There was a law passed in Colorado back in 2015 that does require, before towns expend significant sums of money into broadband, that they opt out of what this bill passed. Now, I will tell you, there are, I forget the number, there's over 100 communities that have done this. The referendum for that has only failed once. And then that community actually went back the next year and passed it that time with updated language. And so if we start down that path, I think there is a high likelihood we would want to pursue that for April ballot. The other thing about that is that also does not necessarily commit you to using funds either. It's literally just an opt-out. We can frame the ballot language to be without tax implication is what's most commonly used, so that we're not obligating ourselves to do or spend anything, just giving ourselves more runway to pursue this.
It seems worthwhile to at least get the ball rolling on that front.
What did the question actually say? I'm sitting here looking and all it is paraphrases and We got the,
I'd have to look at the exact wording, but I know that specific wording is one Aaron and I discussed a bit before it went out,
does
and that
somebody have
was.
the original.
I mean, yeah, I got the summary here, seeing the town of Timnath allocate significant resources, dollars and staff time. And to my recollection, that is the wording that was in the question.
Okay.
That this was considered very high priority for the town.
My 2 bits on this is more of a wording thing and a direction than a disagreement on the broadband. It's this thing, the recommendation is invest in increased broadband capacity, which means there's already a foregone conclusion that we're going to do it. And I would prefer to see that we research broadband capacity and how we go forward.
Yeah.
So I think I'm getting all nods here too, Aaron. So I don't think we're ready to invest or understand those. And my 2 bits too is, you know, Fort Collins fired their one guy that led it up. So I think there's more loose wheels on that truck than what they're telling us about. I'd sure like you to use somebody else other than Fort Collins as a model to emulate on proceeding forward, because I don't think that, you know, they had a bunch of logistic problems, personnel problems, and I'm not sure they're a model we want to emulate.
I disagree with you on that. I know initially they had a lot of issues, but it seems like they've got their ducks in a row much more now than they had initially at the very beginning.
Have they published dollars and cents yet on it?
I do not
See,
know.
they're keeping real quiet on that, and that always, me as the accountant, it always bothers me when someone's, you know, if you want to find the problem, always go to the money, and that concerns me. I may be invalid, you know, all I'm doing is throwing out. I'm not at all saying they're bad, they're this. I'm just saying, let's make sure we research all our alternatives. That's all.
Sure.
And we might be pretty lucky in that we're sandwiched in between a public sector strategy and a private sector strategy. And I got to think that if there's any kind of economies of scale, we would benefit either one to be courting us as well, saying, you know, we'd like you to expand into ours and here's what you get out of it. And as long as we get back to our old thing of a win-win situation, I think everybody would be happy. But I'm just worried about expectations.
So I think we're just given, go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say, I think too, that learning from communities who have gone through some issues with it is actually a really good group to talk to, because we don't want to repeat some of those. And as far as the funding or the money piece of it, that was tied to, I believe, was that tied to a tax increase in Fort Collins? Or either way, it's public dollars, and there's ways to get that information from the city. So I would say, I think just researching any and all options would be what I would say.
Good comments.
And I'm hearing an echo. Is everyone else hearing an echo?
Yeah, I'll remind people, which you probably already know, I remember many of communities like Arvada and that, who said, let's go to cable and we'll get one provider and they'll be able to provide that. And as soon as they cut all of the trenches and put in all the cable, it's going to be almost dirt cheap. Those things never happened.
Well, that's what happened in Fort Collins with Comcast.
Tempe.
So I think we're just gonna have to live with the echo, I think. So I think I'm looking to all of you. All we're doing now, Aaron, is giving guidance comments, correct? Yeah, so group, what I'm hearing is that because I thought you nodded when I made the one comment, is that we'd like you to research into the various alternatives in broadband capacity and where we go from there. And so I think that's that's we'll take that recommendation as is revised with that.
And just one clarifying question to Brett's point, is everyone comfortable with us preparing ballot language? Again, that is no cost obligation, but that it will allow for the city to essentially go forward, potentially investing in broadband. We can't make an investment until that happens. And so our hands are tied. Again, it's literally 100% pass rate for this historically in Colorado.
It's just a ballot question giving us permission to look at it. It's not any commitment of anything.
Correct.
Well, he said
Correct.
something different than what you just said, so I want to clarify that.
I
So
heard the same.
it is not a commitment of funds.
Mhm.
It allows for a commitment of funds, but the question itself is not a specific commitment of funds. It opens the door, but does not start the commitment. Without that, the door remains closed and we can never participate in any investment in broadband infrastructure. So without that ballot question, we can do all the research in the world, but we'll never be able to spend money towards it, not significant money.
But we can do it once we put the ballot question forward.
And if it comes back in the affirmative, yes,
Right.
then we can begin. So that's why I'm asking, is everyone okay
So
with
I'm
us
wondering if we're getting
doing
the
that?
cart before the horse. Why wouldn't we have all the information, that we'd have the dollars that's involved in it, so that people can make an informed decision that yes, they want it, or no, they don't want it, based on that?
Well, we have 82% of people saying they're willing to invest significantly. We can be pulling numbers and talking to partners between now and April. And then the ballot in April, even if it passes and we find there's not a partnership going forward and we're content with Comcast and our current providers, we're never obligated to spend money until given direction by the council.
It just keeps the door open for us. to have that
But it
time.
does open the door. So to not vote in April delays us until the next election, or we have to pony up for our own special election to do that. And actually, I don't know if we can do it outside of April or November. So it just allows us to go the next step on the path. And if we don't take it in April, then we're delayed 7 more months.
This is a budget workshop, so I'd throw something out. Do we have anybody on staff with this capability?
No.
Okay, so we might want to look at the very least to put a line in the budget that will have, like 50 to 75 grand. So if we have to get a contract person that'll come in and give us the pros and cons of public versus private versus what's happening in northern Colorado kind of thing, we've already got that line in the budget. And that sort of shows the community here, we heard you in the survey and we put a line in the budget to use for an RFP or for something to get the right kind of expertise to guide the council and the staff.
Go ahead.
I think personally, I don't know how we go about voting on having this language drawn up, but it seems like whether we do it or not, it would be good to know and have that checked off the list. So if we did want to move forward, we could do it sooner than waiting another year from now before even being able to explore it further. So I would be in favor of the language for the April timeframe.
I don't see a risk in doing that piece. And like you said, just checking that off. We're not promising we're going to do it or we're not going to do it, but just getting that, opening the door to be able to.
Okay. I think you heard what they said.
Yeah, and as just final point of clarification, before it would go on the ballot, we do have to have you all vote for it to go on the ballot. So there will be a formal vote, but that's useful for us so we can consult with other communities to get that language. So thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on. So the second one, Megan, I'll let you add in here, but establish priorities for expanding the town's park and trail. Do you want to, I mean, it's pretty obvious right there. It just and based on the survey, I think it's a correct interpretation of the survey. So let's go to 3.
I had one on that.
Oh.
The only thing I'd add in there is I saw that Wild Wings sort of is at the end, but I think that's more a reflection of population in the town than anything else. And if I'm wrong, you guys looked at the survey to see where they're coming from. I think I'm going to put out the thing of we've got to take care of the parks we've already got going as a priority and before we start a new kind of deal. So I just throw that out.
I'll just add one comment to that I thought was interesting about Wild Wing Park is I think 26, 27% of the town said it was a higher priority, but only about 9% of the respondents identified as from Wild Wing. So it was a pretty outsized group of people.
Yeah.
Thought it was something worth pursuing.
And that's why I think we always have to step back on any survey and say, okay, there's statistics and then there's damn statistics.
Right.
And what we're
be
really
careful.
talking about is pavement
Right.
and bathrooms.
Right.
Kind of thing. And people from all over the town use that with their kids are going over there and playing in the matches. So.
Yeah.
So I think wording and everything else, we agree with number 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3.
If I might interject, I just want to add in, there is opportunity to cross tabulate that data. So if you want to know what, a certain population of an area in town, how they responded to a specific question, we can run that data for you. So you can kind of get a clear idea of who in town is saying some of this. So I just want to throw that out there. If that does come up, we can certainly view that further.
Brooke, that's exactly why I wanted you to listen in. So
Great.
I would throw out, you don't think to worry about it?
No,
I would, here's
live
my
in Harmony
suggestion.
Club,
Let me make
and
my
I'm going to be an
statement first.
advocate for Wild Wing, and I'm hearing from the other members here that.
Let me make my statement
Yeah,
first before you disagree with me. My friend Rick, is that let's take all the Wild Wing residents and see what percent it would be based upon just the Wild Wing residents. My guess, Rick, is that it'll be 80% Wild Wing residents will be saying it, which will be a better mandate than what maybe.
Yeah, I
this
just didn't
step
want to
is.
spend any more money because I think we know what
I
it's
d-
going to be.
Hey, Brooke, I assume it's a simple thing of running the math on the Excel spreadsheet, right?
Yes, a different data source, but yes, we would just cross those numbers. And I can send that, short, first thing tomorrow morning if that's okay.
Okay, that sounds awesome.
Great.
Thank you. So the next one's explore funding scenarios, location, scope for recreation center, conduct community engagement. And I don't know if I'm reading the same survey that this suggestion's coming from, because I got the exact opposite. And let me tell you where I'm looking at page 11 of the municipal sports complex, municipal rec center. So the first 2 are, I do not support a sports center, and 2, build up cash on a pay-as-we-go system, which says the way they want to fund the municipal sports process is either cash that we have available or cash that will come. That works out to 72% of the people. I mean, it's the biggest mandate we have beside broadband. And so there's that. Then the other one is on municipal rec center. There's buildup of cash and issue debt to enable construction sooner. There's only 26% that said issue debt. None and buildup of cash is 65%. And if you knock out the unsure, it ends up being 70%. So we've got a huge mandate on no additional borrowings for a municipal sports complex or municipal rec center. So it disappoints me to see this recommendation on here, quite frankly. So I do not agree with it. I don't think that's what we should direct staff to do, and I'd prefer deleting this out.
Mark, can I add something to that?
Sure.
So I think first we should look at the fact that 50% find that it's important to have this facility. If we add in the neutrals, it's 65%. So I think that's where this one is coming from, is that 65% of the residents are either neutral or think a rec center is important. I think what number 3, how I read it anyway, is just saying, we know that more than 50% find it important. So we should look at how we could potentially fund it, whether it's in the future, locations and things like that. For not next year necessarily, but kind of like, hey, we know that more than half of our people want this, so let's look at how we can get that to happen. That's how I read it.
I mean, I think the way I see it is yeah, you have a very slim majority of people that say it's important to them, but really the way that the town's telling us they want to pay for it is through reserves. And yeah, you know, I mean, we're looking at 20 million for something like this. And so you know, even if we really aggressively saved, you'd be looking at 10 years to have that kind of money set aside at a minimum. And with 50% supporting it, I don't think you can go that aggressive of saving. I mean, I have a tough time seeing how to pay for it. The town wants us to pay for it. It seems to me it's one of those things we just kind of need to punt on. That's the message I feel like we're getting from the town to push this back, keep it in the future projects for now. And
I agree with you, Brett. I think it's just, it's not a priority.
Yeah.
We, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 years, but I do not see us wanting to expend resources or dollars on this issue.
If I could, you know, one thing we've kind of, as a staff, talked quite a bit about, and I think we've mentioned it to you folks as the mayor and council, this is a very high level approach. And so there's always an opportunity less formally to task Megan and Kim to have a specific survey that could help parse this out better without needing to go out and spend money, you know, and to just drill down on that. And so there's nothing that says we have to do anything that obligates money today, but we could try and seek a little more clarity from the community with a follow-up.
I don't know how much more clarity you want. You know, I hope this isn't a personal agenda for you, Aaron, because it's starting to look like that. And I'm seeing the council telling you that the town wants to use cash and no debt. And so to spend time, money, and effort going forward with that doesn't make sense to me.
I find that a little bit hurtful for you to say that, because I know up here, I know recreation opportunities is something I've certainly spoken of, maybe not necessarily a rec center specifically, but I feel like Aaron's just going to do whatever we direct him to do. So he's definitely heard from some of us up here that recreation, sports, things like that is important, but I don't know. That's just my take.
Well, and, you know, I don't want it to come across as a personal agenda. So if I am representing myself that way, I apologize. It's more tied to the fact that 65% of the respondents support having a rec center.
That's fine.
And so the way to pay for it is different. And that's why I thought we might drill down, but that's the context, is the 65%.
You know, I think the reason we put the dollars in this one is it's like everybody, if you say, hey, you can have a Mercedes Benz, they're going to say, oh, great. But you got to pay for it. Oh, no. And I think the town was very astute and intelligent on getting back to us saying, hey, you know, yeah, we like rec. I'll go with Lisa. Yeah, we like rec and that, but we don't want to go borrow. We don't want to increase our property taxes. We don't want to increase our sales taxes to fund that. And that's what I think the message is that I read in this survey.
yeah, I mean, I would say even any kind of outreach is something that can be punted on for at least a couple of years, because that's the message that they sent. So
I think we delete this one totally.
Yeah, and on a positive note, there's like 3 or 4 major pieces to these two projects. The first piece is, where would you put it? And fortunately, we've got a couple sites probably that we don't have to buy a site. You've got a site at the other side of the police station over here. And I might add, as a side note, we've still got a sign on the other police station site, future home of the police. We've got to get that sign down. But that said, we've got the site here. We've got another site up in Old Town where Dream Vision was looked at. So that piece, by letting this thing cook a little more you're not limiting your ability to find a location that would suit a rec center or suit a sport or fields, if you would, kind of thing. So we've got that. The other pieces is what it would look like. And the third piece is what it would cost the day you open that facility up, because it's not just the cost up front, the 20 and the 18. The rec centers are expensive, and Windsor's got a great one, but they've got 40,000 people in their neighborhood that we don't have. So I think it just might not be the right time to cook it yet.
And I
to
think that's a good
identify it,
way to
but you
say it
always
is it's
look
not,
at it on the
it's not time.
horizon.
Let's not prioritize.
It's not a bad idea. We would all like it, because I know our kids aren't getting any younger, the ones that have kids in these neighborhoods. And how many of them go over, if all you have to do is go over to Windsor's Rec Center any Saturday morning and see all of their courts being played on. And there are a lot of them are the kids from Timnath Ranch.
So I'm going to skip to 5 and hit a real positive one right away. And that is continue to prioritize community events. I assume everybody based on prior votes say that. So that's a go. And I'm going to go to 6. Continue to cultivate communications with Timnath residents to foster education and community engagement. And again, I've seen this council always vote for that type of stuff, and I don't see us at all. Does anybody have any comment they want to make on that or anything? Okay, so I think that sounds good. All right, moving up to initiate discussions about bringing a library branch to Timnath. Do you want to say anything on that?
Well, only that was placed on here in response to the fact that I think it was 61 or 2% of folks said that they would be very interested in that. So we wanted to at least posit it for discussion among you all, whether that conversation should start happening with the library district in response to there being a majority.
You have a question on that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go.
So Aaron, what does that look like? I mean, obviously we have a library district, and I know that they get a little bit of our tax, they have mill levies here in town. But what does that look like to even like bring that up? Has there ever been discussion with them?
Not that I'm aware of. So I think that's the natural first step would be just to start that conversation. What would this look like? There's a lot of components we don't know related to that. So I think as this is a recommendation as it's phrased is literally just maybe we start that conversation. What would it look like? What would that relationship be like? Yeah, I think that's our natural first step if we go down that path.
Who would we be branching with?
So there's a Pooter district, a library
Pooter
district.
district. So what's the Fort Collins one that's just right up the road?
The Pooter
that's
That is in
Pooter,
that district.
Pooter.
That's exactly right.
They would want to put one that close?
We really don't know. We've not had
Because
conversations.
I know our family uses that one, and then we use the one in Windsor. And I know Windsor's tried at least twice now. They've picked out the site for a new library and taken it to the voters, and they failed it twice now.
I think it's a slow start that we could even just begin a conversation. What does it look like? And, see where it goes. Or if it's on par with the rec center, it's something, it doesn't hurt our feelings as staff if we want to let it go for a year or two.
I see it a lot like a grocery store in a way. We're just not ready for it. We are ready for grocery stores in our own minds because we want the convenience of being able to go right down the street and get something. But we have one in Windsor and we have them in Fort Collins, and they're there. I just don't know if we're ready for this.
My thoughts are, and I don't initiate discussions. I don't care if the council decides to go that way, but I'm closer here in Timnath than I was in the library when I lived in Fort Collins. And so we've got 2 libraries that are as close as possible to me. It almost seems redundant to build another one, just my 2 bits. But I'm okay if we want to initiate discussions too.
I think I'm open to the conversations. I don't feel super strongly. I do know that the library used to do some events or story time or things like that in Timnath. I don't know if it stopped due to COVID or what that was. I also know that they sometimes do a mobile library when they go up to some of the remote areas. And I wonder if that would be a possibility where once a week or something like that, they would have, like if I put a hold on a book and I know that they're coming once a week to Timnath, maybe that's something that, or if they do like story times or something, I think if community members are asking about it, I think we could look at it. As far as like a physical location, I don't know if we're at that point. I know there are some communities that do, they have locations with library drop-off places where if you've checked out a book, it gets.
Which we have right here. Oh, front.
No, that's to return books. This
Right.
would be to pick up
Oh,
books.
pick up the book.
It's almost like a vending machine where you scan your card. I can't remember which library it's at, but it's somewhere somewhat locally. So I think just looking at some of those things would be worth it. But again, if we decide to, if you look at it and we say, no, that's not really something we want, we can get rid of that too.
So do we have anybody that disagrees that just initiating discussions is a bad thing? Can I look, Rick, just initiating discussion.
I think everybody was
That
waving
would-
their arms in agreement.
Yeah, there you go. Boy, I thought I just scored a touchdown. That is all the recommendations. This didn't hit there. Is the ballot questions. And it looks, I don't know why it's not as a recommendation or not, but I mean, I was told once in a vote that if you get more than 55%, that it's a landslide. And this would be way a landslide as far as how we proceed and what goes forward with it. I'm going to make a comment and then you guys disagree with you if you think. Can we direct Lori, our town lawyer, to draw up ballot questions for the April ballot that deals with these two issues? And we'll need to talk as a council sometime. So maybe as a discussion item after one of the council meetings. I mean, yeah, at the end of a council meeting, because there's some idiosyncrasies with the term limits and there's some idiosyncrasies with, what is a contribution? They wanted them, but we didn't put a dollar amount. Didn't we? Wait, I thought we did put a dollar amount. We didn't? Okay. So we need to discuss as a council and get to an agreement on those issues, don't you think? Okay. Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. I was surprised that wasn't listed under recommendations.
Yeah.
But I do think that we would need to at least, especially if we know we want to do that, at least get a calendar, because I know there are very strict deadlines of when you need certain things turned in order to put it on the ballot. And just knowing that that's coming up in, 6 months or so, I would definitely say we'd want to definitely start looking at that. And we have to vote on the language and all of that stuff and whatever community outreach we want to do related to that as well.
Okay. So if you could add that to the recommendations then, proceeding forward in an attempt to get both of those proposals on the ballot in April, along with the council fine tuning both of those.
Yeah, I will ask Lori to start that. And similar to what I said with broadband earlier, before anything goes to the ballot, you all have to approve that to go on the ballot. So
Thank you.
Yep.
I will definitely get started on that as soon as possible.
Thanks, Larry. I didn't know you were listening in. I thought you were God, just starting talking to us.
Thank you.
Megan and Kim, is there any closing, and Brooke, is there any closing things after you heard all the discussion that you think we overlooked or should discuss?
I don't think so. This has been very helpful and thanks for the conversation and for the additional action item on these two ballot questions. And I'll put the question back to you. Is there anything else that jumped out at you that we didn't consider?
I think we're good. Kim, you okay? Brooke, you okay?
Yes, absolutely. I'll
Okay.
send over some of that data that you were looking at and you know, all data requests from now through the future, anything you're looking to explore a little bit further, feel free to send our way. That's the least we can do for you guys to help you understand the data a little bit more. So we'll get that over to you, and then anything else you have, just let us know.
And I think I speak for the entire council. Brooke, Kim, Megan, thank you very much. It was very easy reading. It's very easy to decipher. And thanks for the quick response of when we wanted to see the details. You probably weren't anticipating we wanted to see more details, and we did, and we get that. So thanks for providing those and stuff to us. So I'm suggesting on your agenda, you have us taking a break. So let's take a 10-minute break. Okay.
Next on the agenda, we have Melissa Buck with UMB Bank to give us financing options for the police building.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. Is this thing on? Okay, perfect. Okay. So here we go. So you have in your packet, I believe, a hard copy of this presentation. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over a bunch of the slides because you've already read it. The key point on this particular slide is simply to reiterate the fact that it seems to me the town's biggest priority here is to build a responsibly sized police facility for the next 20 years. And currently the town is in the design and construction phase. So if you haven't already, you're probably going out to bid pretty soon to get some actual cost estimates on constructing and equipping the facility. So the first option in paying for this would be pay as you go. And that simply means you are saving up money in a cash reserve to pay for the project. The positive of this, or the biggest advantage of this, is you're obviously not paying interest on any sort of borrowing. The disadvantage or disadvantages with this approach is there could potentially be a project delay if you have a change order or a cost overrun where you haven't set aside enough funds in order to fully equip and acquire the project. The other side of this would be the opportunity cost. The town has a significant amount of funds on hand that could be leveraged for other projects or invested, or something else could be done with the funds as well. The other primary way of financing or paying for this facility would be issuing a certificate of participation. So I'm not going to go through the general procedures or anything like that. What this essentially does is it's not technically considered debt under Tabor, so it doesn't require a vote from the citizens to issue it. Largely because the town would be utilizing its authority to acquire or dispose of property as opposed to issuing debt. So the way that it would work is the town would identify some sort of asset, whether it's a building or something similar that's in comparable value to the amount of debt being issued. Little d, not big D under Tabor. The reason why we do that is it gives investors a certain amount of comfort that the town will continue to annually appropriate those lease payments, in essence, that debt payment to pay back investors, if that makes sense. So the biggest consideration for investors on this is what they deem the essentiality of that leased asset. So common examples would be like for a school district, it would be a school. For a community such as Timnath, it might be City Hall, that sort of thing. So the advantages and disadvantages, the advantage, as I mentioned, is that you don't have to ask for citizen approval to do this because it's not legally considered debt. The other part of this is that we can structure a financing scenario that would take into account the town's needs. So it could be 20 years, it could be 10 years. We can also structure the debt payments if, for example, the town was expecting to get a large amount of money in 1 year, or maybe its resources were a little more constrained in another year. We can structure the debt service however necessary. The other big advantage on this is it allows the town to pay for the cost of the project over time as opposed to upfront. And similarly, it's used very commonly to finance difficult projects. There are certain projects that communities generally do not vote in favor of, but there's still requirements that a town must, or a county or something like that, must provide those facilities. And so the example I have in here are jails. This is a very common way to finance like public safety or jails because when you go out to vote and you ask for a general obligation, you start getting into a lot of debates over criminal justice reform, so on and so forth. So, regardless of where anybody is on that side of the coin, you still have to provide public safety services. And lastly, it is very cost effective. In your packet, as one of the appendices, I included a preliminary bond run where when you look at it, it's about 2% all in. So the red box that you have highlighted in that, it's just over 2%. That's for 20 years of financing a COP, and that takes into account all the costs of issuance, the fees, and everything like that. Moving on to the disadvantages, it is more complex than perhaps doing a general obligation. And so we do see that pricing differential between a general obligation bond and a COP. Historically, you're looking at probably about 20 basis points, which is still pretty low. That spread has gotten fairly compressed over the years. And in Colorado, investors are extremely comfortable with both, and especially COPs. The other disadvantage is, of course, you're going to pay interest on this borrowing. And sometimes that interest can be pretty high, depending on the nature of the project or the town's credit rating. Similarly, non-appropriation consequences, should the town not appropriate for debt service, it would be a massive ding to the town's credibility, their creditworthiness, and you could potentially risk foreclosure on that asset. And lastly, the disadvantage or advantage, depending on how you look at it, it leverages current resources. So the positive side of that, it is not a tax increase of any sort. The disadvantage of that is when you go through the budget process, you have to figure out how you're going to pay for debt service as well as all your other services and programs. So taking a look at interest rates, as I mentioned, rates are historically low. As I said earlier, you have in your packet a preliminary bond run. It shows about 2%. That's pretty low compared to how these things used to price. So currently, the graph that I want to point to or draw your attention to is the one that's on the top right that shows benchmark interest rate curves. So what you see in front of you is the AAA MMD. AAA MMD pretty much refers to an index of how AAA general obligation bonds trade. So you can see from the 1-year maturity, it's pretty close to zero. And then all the way to 30 years, you're probably looking at 1.6%, something like that, for a bond that is a general obligation, meaning it is an unconditional pledge to raise taxes however necessary to repay that debt for a AAA rated entity. And then looking ahead for how interest rates might move, I'm sure we've all read the same headlines. The Fed people are expecting the Fed to potentially raise rates as soon as potentially next year, maybe 2023 at the latest. So what we have included here is basically a summary of the Wall Street Journal's survey of economists of how they expect those interest rates to move. So the top left, the 10-year Treasury forecast, you can see that as we start to move towards 2023, they expect those rates to rise. So that will also have an impact with muni rates in that we would largely expect to see those rates to rise over time as well. So lastly, I included on this slide a couple of considerations for the town to take into account. Using COPs to finance this project or another project would allow the town to afford more now, as opposed to saving up for every single project and then doing that, and then undergoing that process. when you look at it, current interest rates are extremely low. And also take into account that governments tend to purchase things that increase at higher rates than just simply the rate of inflation. For example, when I was doing a similar project with Arapahoe County, and they were looking to put something on the ballot measure for a new criminal justice center, including expanding their jail, you know, the cost of buying a squad car had increased probably like 200% over the past 5 years. And a large part of that is their needs have changed. And so the requirements they needed of their squad cars were significantly higher than simply going out and buying a stock car. The second big point here is the town seems to be very engaged with its citizens. And so regardless of whatever the town decides to do, and kind of following off of the community engagement survey, however, if the town decides to go and finance a project, it would be a good idea, I think, in my personal opinion, to engage citizens either through a town hall or some other sort of mechanism to hear of what the residents would like to happen. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Understand I went through this a little bit quickly.
Thanks. Does anybody have any questions? No, well presented. Thank you.
Okay.
Lisa, you want to start in on the budget?
Thank you. So on your third tab, I tried to highlight some assumptions and where we're at in the budget process. Attached, you have the 2022 draft budget, and then you also have 5-year cash flow projections. We continued our approach on fairly conservative revenue projections. And then in certain areas, we tried to drill down a little bit more on the expenses. So we were more accurately reflecting what was going to happen. So particularly with personnel, we looked at hire dates and tried to forecast those out so we don't have such a high variance on salaries. And so those are fine-tuned a little bit in here. I think overall, positive news all the way around. Our assessed valuation is assumed to increase 23%, and that's based on the preliminary AVs from Larimer County. What that amounts to is a total of 1.1 million based on the 6.68 mills for the town of Timnath between the TDA and the town. We're making some assumptions on sales tax that it'll increase by 10%. Currently, we're at 13% growth over last year. We did not project any revenue proceeds from land or other capital assets. I know we'll be having those discussions later in the year, but that doesn't reflect anything there. As far as the CIP, we did make some adjustments mainly on timing from the last work session to this work session, and we did bump up a couple of lines just because construction prices keep going up, so we made those adjustments. The police building assumption is in here as $12.9 million total cost and not issuing any debt. Having said all that, bottom line, your working reserve, you can fund it at 50% plus for all 5 years, taking into account all of the assumptions that we made in the previous work session related to personnel, cost increases, and the CIP. So with that, I will answer any questions or.
So I know we all got different questions and stuff. So first off, well presented, everything looked really well there and hits. And I've got a bunch of stuff, but I'm going to just ask one question that's a clarification. I think it's a typo. Is on page 2, 4th bullet. Should that be 2021 and 2022 as opposed to 2022, 2023, or are you planning on doing a survey? Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't see which.
Okay, page 2 of the summary of significant assumptions.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And then there's the fourth bullet down,
Yep, you're right.
just change the date. Okay, great. All right, I'll sort of, I know everybody's got, why don't everybody do a couple and then we'll just keep circling around. Does that sound okay? So Brett, did you have any questions?
I'll just add a comment for the council's benefit. One of the assumptions I checked with Lisa was, as we're looking at the long-term projections of our reserves, this does not include any future sales tax revenue sources and includes very little to no commercial development fees. So it's a very conservative number when we're looking at our reserves from 2022 on. I'll just make that comment for now.
Do you have any other? Okay, Aaron? Rick, how would I know you wouldn't have a comment?
Your assumption on sales tax, I think it's a little high in light of supply chain problems that we look at today going forward. 10%, if there's not those items at Costco or Walmart, that could drop substantially. When I get a newsletter and it says, if you're going to buy a turkey this Thanksgiving, you might want to buy it now and pay a little more because you might not be getting these things. So the 10% might turn out to be a little high, but overall, everything looks good.
Okay.
Do you have another question, Rick?
Yeah, the other one I had was regarding land. I guess, when are we going to, manager, talk about potentially selling a couple of these houses in Old Town?
Scheduled for December. We had it for next month. We had some schedule conflicts. We had to bump it. Lisa and I actually talked about this. We thought the conservative way was to say, assume we sell nothing, and then anything that sells, I don't want to call it gravy, but it essentially adds to the budget.
And Aaron's
so we're taking the
kept
conservative.
trying to get it into our schedule, and either I or somebody else bumps them out.
I would
So
just warn everybody that the one house is sitting there, it looks like vacant. And vacant houses are a potential problem for a number of reasons. And this seems to be the hottest market right now. It's just a shame that we can't at least take one of those properties and say, it's vacant, we don't have a lessee or a leasee or that. Let's go ahead and put it on the market and see if we can get a fair market value for it and clear it off our books. December. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But staying on the vacant, I assume somebody's checking it so often. I mean, it's easy to let those things go and you just sort of out of sight, out of mind. So and I guess my question is, should we have town staff or should we have a police person check those? Because those can be dangerous. You guys make the call. I'm just throwing out.
I'm sure it's insured too.
Yeah, I think our property management company is responsible for checking on it while it's vacant.
Okay.
Good.
Lisa. Okay. Well, I'm an accountant. So I have a few, mainly questions. Lisa, great job. It was easy to follow, and I really thought you did an incredible job and kept our reserves good and everything else. And I like the conservative revenue look. And so I like, and it's easy to have two people look at something on assumptions and have different opinions. I liked all of yours. This may be for you or maybe for Don. So on page 6 of the summary of significant assumptions, we've got 1.8 for Main Street Bus Grove to, oops, that's not what I want. I want Weitzel Street extension, the $1 million. Are we going to get reimbursed for that, or are we going to have to come out of pocket with that?
Well, the quick answer is I don't know yet.
Okay.
Because we don't have the final information for the development agreement and what's going to happen with the development. But our intention is we will get reimbursed in some manner or form, most likely for the majority of it. You shouldn't probably assume all of it.
Okay. Lisa, will you keep track on council reports on how that's going, just, you know, on a reimbursement versus what we're paying and stuff. And then same question on page 6, Main Street, Bus Grove to Prospect. You know, I know there's Fisher in there. I know there's Willis Farm in there. And I would assume that they're going to be paying for a portion of whatever improvements. So is the 1.8 a net or is it the gross?
It's ours. So what that 1.8 is when Fisher builds their entire frontage, we're going to build they're only required to build a little more than half of the road. We will put the rest of the funds to complete that section of road for that entire period.
So explain, so now, so I don't understand, what are we doing with the 1.8? I mean, what's it look like?
Say one more time.
What's the 1.8 going to? If, so, because I may have heard you wrong, so correct me. What I heard was that you weren't going to do any improvements until Fisher or Willis front onto County Road 5.
Correct.
Okay, so what's this 1.8 for?
It's for when they do it, and they are
and you're
Fisher,
anticipating it to, I got it.
Absolutely, and the majority of that 1.8 potentially can come back with reimbursements for the development of the east side of the road.
Okay.
So, just to be clear.
Yeah. And the east side's not going to be for a while because it's a bunch of horse pasture.
It is, but there's a development there that we're in, Matt and his folks are in discussion with on.
Hey, while we're talking about developments, whatever happened to the guys that came in and were thinking about doing a project on the north side of Bus Grove?
County Road 40, yeah. They're still working on it on their side. Yep.
Then page 7, Goodman facility says 350. So maybe this is to you, Lisa, more than it is to Don, but my recollection was that was 550, and I think there was like 100 that was sort of floating around at one time. So is the reason why this is 350 is we only got it half done? Don?
Yeah, we're going to get it mostly done. The 350 finishes it, and then we had, I think the 100 that you were talking about that was floating around was the pavement.
Yeah.
And when we went through that evaluation with the current contractor, we got numbers that we were not comfortable with. And so we took that out, and we're going to rebid. When the project's finished, we're going to bid it for just the paving around there. We think we're going to get a much better number.
Okay, so did we do okay? Did it come in at 550?
It came in, Brian, you probably have a better feel for that.
Yeah, the original budget for it was 900 and it came in around a little over 650.
Okay. Okay, great, thanks.
There is a vehicle truck wash bay.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a car wash.
Well, a truck wash.
Yeah.
And that'll be in concrete though, I assume.
Yes.
Yes.
That's inside the building.
It's totally inside.
And then the last question, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask is, again, on page 7, the very bottom line, North KM Farms, 257,000. Is that just the payment of principal and interest on the note?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Can I go back to the 4800 building for a second?
Sure.
It's under construction right now. If anybody wants to go out and walk it and take a look at it, just let me know and I'll take you over there.
Okay, thank you. My next one's on page 11. So there must be so Aaron, this is you. Town administration salary and benefits. And so, and I see that we're looking at maybe getting an assistant town manager and that, but the numbers aren't tracking for me. So if I look at the 2020 actual, which is around $1 million. And then I'm comparing that to the projected for 22 at $1.4 million. I'd expect it to be up, but I wouldn't have expected 400,000.
So we have the town attorney, the paralegal in there.
Oh, the town attorney is in town
Yes.
administration.
Yes.
Got it. That makes sense. Because we only had a
It was all
part year type
contracted.
thing last year, yeah. And then the last thing was at one time, council help me, at one time we talked about, and I think it was when Wes was here, having a consultant come in, because we don't know, we didn't have a clue. One of the things we were talking about is we don't know what is reasonable for a town this side for certain expenses coming on. And I think Wes suggested, well, we could hire a consultant to come in and give us, here's towns of our community that here's how much they spend on town administration and I'm on the police force and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a clue on those numbers. So when I see these, I can look at last year to this year, but knowing in the aggregate, does that make sense? And we've grown so much that somehow that makes sense to me, but I'll just throw that out.
I mean, I know when I was trying to decide if I supported bringing our attorney in-house, that's kind of what I was doing. I mean, is there, I guess you have a specific objective in mind, or you're just kind of curious how we compare with Windsor with?
No, I'm not curious. You know, have we, obviously I'd be worried about the high side.
Right.
You know, are we expending funds in a certain expense category that we wouldn't really need to, or we could be more efficient on compared to other towns our size?
Right.
And it's really derived from the standpoint of we've grown so fast and we don't have a benchmark of, you know, where are we and stuff. And Aaron, I know you're a big chunk of that, but you were at a town that wasn't growing, and this one is. And is there a distinguishing thing there that we should take a look at and have somebody come over and just look over our shoulder and say, you know, that seems like a lot to be spending on, Terry's looking at me, the police force. And so, you know, I don't know if $4 million of salaries to police is the right number for us or not. Wouldn't have a clue. I know Terry's looking at it, but should we have somebody else check it? That's the question. And it really is a question.
Yeah. So Mark, just as a clarification, are you specifically thinking about personnel and wages? Or is it more of a broader?
Probably personnel and wages. So if you wanted to narrow it down, yeah, I'm really, I'm grappling with what to grab onto here, but you know, is it the whole thing that we should do? And do you guys remember talking with Wes on this once or not? Yeah.
I know we talked about looking at audits of salaries and that's done somewhat regularly.
Yeah, it's considered a salary survey. It's actually in the 2022 budget. And so that would be able to be, if there need to be changes, that would probably end up reflecting in 23 while we use 22 as the survey year.
So I don't think it's salary amount. I think it's personnel head count.
So are you, can I ask a clarifying question to you? Are you wondering if we have the staff within the departments that we should have? Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Exactly. Do we have the staff? Are we on, do we have less people? I mean, I'm okay with that too. I don't think, I mean, I'll only speak for myself. I don't have a clue how many police officers we should have. I don't have a clue how many engineers we should have. I don't have a clue on how many accountants we should have. And so I'm just sort of totally going on the whim of that. And
I think that would be hard.
My accountant in me just says that feels uncomfortable.
I feel like that would be hard unless we're looking at a community very, very similar to ours, right? Because as a council, we decide what our priorities are. And that's kind of how staff is determined. And I'm assuming that department heads, when they're doing their own department budget, look at whether they feel that the department has the staffing that they need, or whether they need less or more, and they kind of come up with those recommendations.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of the 5-year. They give us kind
And
of a
I'm,
projection.
and just to be very clear, I don't see anything that I have a problem with. I don't have anything going. I'm really basing this on Wes came in at some point and said, here's something we ought to take a look at. And we sort of blew it off because we had so much other stuff going on, and he was ready to leave. So I don't think we did anything with it, which is fine. And I don't care if we don't do anything with it. I'm just asking.
I don't specifically remember that, but I don't think it would be a bad thing for us as a council to look at where our priorities are and what we want each department to do, which is kind of what we do with the budget piece. Or having department heads even talk to us separately about what each department is really focusing on and how many people they have or what they think they need or something like that. But I feel like the budget piece kind of covers some of that. I don't remember Wes saying anything though.
I know it was probably about 2.5 years ago. We did something with public service, whatever that public service
Public
company
Works?
name was,
Oh.
and where we looked at salaries and we looked at our staffing. Was that included in that report? Do you guys even know?
I don't know, but I know we did the last salary study in 2019, and those adjustments were reflected in 2020.
Right.
I don't know if there was any like head count or anything like that associated with it. I just know it was a salary study.
It seems to me like we had done some type of let's look at where we're at and where we need to be. And that's how we came up with sort of this projected FTE growth over the years of putting that plan together.
So I'm going to just listen to people here and stuff and throw it back to you, Aaron. You know, if you'd like to have somebody, come in and advise on, are we where we should be? Great. If you don't think we need it, great.
No, I appreciate that. We can see if there's an option with the salary survey already budgeted for 22. We could ask them to potentially provide that kind of an evaluation too. So we'll certainly pursue that as we put that out.
Okay. That's all I got. Rick.
Yeah, I've got a couple more. One is, when are we going to start putting dirt over on the lot for the police station? Do you know?
As soon as we find some dirt. We had one source of dirt that we were trying to get a hold of, and it kind of evaporated faster than we could get it under
Is there
contract.
anything else you can share with us as far as the status of what's going on there?
It's currently out to bid. We have a meeting on the 29th to review those, and the construction contract is scheduled to come to you guys on November 9th.
Good.
So I don't have anything right now, but it's coming and it's coming hard.
Good. The second issue is also in public safety. I read in here somewhere that the department is looking at purchasing 14 new cars. Surely we've got to look at a situation where we can start rotating these, where there's 3 or 4 cars a year, and not have put on 14 cars this year, and in 2 more years buy 14 or 16 or 18 more. That just seems to me like it's way out of line.
Yeah, Terry and I have had those discussions. 2 factors. One, we're ramping up, so we'll have additional staff, so we're buying for those. And our 2021 vehicle purchases got delayed, so we're not going to get our 2021 vehicles until 2022. So that's why it's such a large output in 2022. But we've talked about stretching out those
And you'll
useful
have
lives,
a rotation
so it
that's
balances out
manageable
a
every
little bit
year.
more.
The town will know that they've got to replace about 1/3 of their cars at the most.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
So in this police department budget for 2022, it says 11, slightly over 11, but that number is greater than that. Is there more budget in 23?
No, the 12.9 was total, and so we've incurred costs to date. So the 12.9 is total. That's what we anticipate remaining.
Okay.
And then depending on where we're at with construction through the end of the year, we'll make maybe some final adjustments if we don't spend everything in 2021, and we'll roll that to 2022.
And then after our discussion that we had, our presentation about certificates of participation, what do people feel about that?
Go ahead.
I know I ran on trying to limit the amount of debt that the town would take on. And I would love to see the police station done pay as you go if we've got the revenue to do it, and it looks like we do, and keep our 50% reserve. I would have no problem if we look out on the horizon and say, maybe we go to the voters and see if they want a COP on that rec center or something like that. But I personally, I'd like to see us pay as you go on that thing.
I think we were given a mandate, and we have, there's been 2 sales tax proposals that have been turned down. 72% say they want to do either cash or build up cash. That's 72%, and that was for the sports complex. And the rec center is 70%. I think it's just an overwhelming mandate that this town's a conservative town and doesn't want to borrow.
Yeah, I disagree with you there, but
That's okay.
we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I think that if with the overwhelming amount of people that want to have a broadband initiative, and our absolute lack of cell phone coverage in this town, spending all of our money without taking advantage of these very low rates, I disagree with that. I think that our money would be better spent to help in other areas that people are interested in. So I'm saying my piece. I know I'm not going to win, but I'm saying my piece at least.
Did you have some, Lisa? I mean, I've gone over some of the numbers from in the example that was given of the COP, and as well as looking at the projections. And for me, I don't see us not being able to do the critical projects like broadband based on what I see in the reserves. I see 7 million in the working reserves at the end of next year. And I think if push came down to shove, we should feel okay tapping those as well. The capital projects are part of the purpose we have that. We've been very conservative on that front. And I expect us to have more than the 10 million of total reserves that we have slated for 2022. And that's our low point. So I agree with you. I do think we want to be able to be in position to do other projects, but I think we have the sufficient funds to be able to cover the costs as well as not be overly constrained.
Yep.
I think my point would be to really look at, since we just had that survey, we know kind of what the community is looking for, the broadband piece. I know cell phone coverage didn't fully come up. I know that's a little bit more out of our hands in what we can do. But just kind of, I just want to throw that out there because I know that's important to people too. But to really make sure that we're looking at our road projects, parks projects, because those came up from a lot of people, the traffic, wanting park amenities, things like that. I would just want to make sure that we can get all of the things that we know they want us to do while still maintaining our reserves enough. If we can get all of that stuff and have some for unexpected projects, we've had unexpected road projects come up that are high price items. So having enough to potentially do that as well. I'm kind of open to either of those options, as long as I know we have, can meet some of their expectations based on the survey as well.
So I think we all like the budget. The budget does not include a COP or debt. And everybody good has made their comments
I have
on
another comment.
for. We're ready to pass it. Is there any issue?
Well, I wanted to bring up engineering and planning.
Oh, okay. Go
And
ahead.
not look at the immediate
I'm sorry.
right now. I want to look a couple of years down the road. In our coffee, we had somebody come in and blast us for 20 minutes regarding what they saw was a potential conflict between TST and not having planners or engineers in-house. And I know that as we move forward, it's been ideal working with TST, and they've done an excellent job getting us to where we're at and going out. But some of this stuff, I think, as we grow as a town, we're going to want to do like most towns, have some of the planners and engineers in-house, just like we brought the attorney in-house and that. So I just wanted to throw it out there. I did ask so people know and Don will know to be provided a list of the last 10 years of TST. And if you look at it, it's been very constant expenditures for both planners and engineers. I don't see anything that's way out of whack kind of deal. But I think it's something we start looking at and saying, are we better off? And the other issue I'd raise is it's a pet peeve when some people say when our town folks go out, they bring 2 or 3 people to a meeting and then they get billed clawback to pay for some of that. We need to look at ways to maybe say, do we really need to have 3 people there and then charge the developers for 3 people instead of having 1 or 2 people there? I don't know. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a planner. So I'm going to assume, like we did at the coffee and said that we'll bring that up and discuss it during the budget talks. And that's what I'm doing. Brett was there. And we told this gentleman we'll bring it up and discuss it. The other one is he said there's some projects out there where TST doesn't allow them to go to bid. And we would like to oversee maybe that trail. We'd like to put in a bid to oversee the trail or the bid to overdo this. So I know we've been focusing heavily on having RFPs where we can. And I think we're doing a good job of sort of bird dogging that along. And as we grow, we need to grow and look out in the horizon and say, how do we transition if we really want to do that? And maybe the council doesn't want to do that. But if we do want to transition, then I think the manager needs to know that and then sort of be focusing, because he looks at the immediate picture and the long term well beyond our time here on the council.
Do you want staff to respond?
Whoever, no, they don't have to respond. I'm just putting it out there because I told the gentleman at our coffee, I'd put it out there.
I'll just start by clarifying on our 5-year projection, we do hire a town engineer next year. We hire another town engineer in 2025, and we have slated a public works director in 2024. So this was the first stab at like that progression, and it's something we'll evaluate and speed up or not based on the demands of the town, but that was taken into account, and that's kind of what we've projected.
Don, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're saying, Rick. And, as I've said before, we've surely enjoyed and liked our time with Timnath. We've done this for other communities at years past, and it always has an ebb and a flow. And what we're doing right now and what we're doing with Lisa and Aaron is to do that systematically. And we've been arm in arm in putting together this plan of transitioning to town staff from us. And that allows for a transition that lets all the knowledge transition also and gives a little bit of time to allow that to mature. And then we become the shock absorber for the town as opposed to the entire town staff.
Do you have anything further? Does anybody else have any comments on the budget? Okay, good job.
Thank you.
Amazingly, we blew through that. So I don't see any reason to stick around. We'll reconvene at 6.
Mark, if I could, just one
Yeah.
very brief last comment. This would just be for us as a staff to clarify. So Lisa's been keeping a running tally of action items. I just want to make sure we got them all and that everybody's good and clear on
That'd be
these.
great.
So we had add some budget in the 50-ish thousand range for consulting as it relates to broadband. We had work on ballot language related to broadband to open that door, to start the discussions with the library district to at least kick that off. The ballot language as it relates to term limits and campaign contributions. Did that capture everything? And that's everything that we wanted going forward?
I think we deleted the .3 on the recommendations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. We got that one. Yep.
And did you say the
Language about broadband. Yep. Yep.
I did too. Thanks. Okay, good. You wanted to make some closing comments, Aaron?
Yeah, mostly just to talk about next steps and how the calendar shakes out from here. So with the feedback, we'll make those changes we just discussed. Lisa will post a draft budget on Friday. And then we're going to begin engagement with residents starting next week. We've been working with Slate in that regard. So we have some things out we'll be putting out next week to hopefully get some engagement from our residents. And then looking forward from there, we'll have that first reading on November 9th with the final budget adoption in December.
Thank you. Anybody, any final things anybody has? Hey, Megan, would you stick around for, I need to ask you what you need me to do on something.
Yeah, I had something I was going to ask. I don't know if you can share with the council or not. I noticed that there was an article in the Coloradan regarding the Connell project, and it sort of bothers me when I see that and then see that the developer in Connell did not return their calls. Is there any update that can be shared with us? Because it fits into the budget going forward as well.
Yeah, that news article caught us a little bit by surprise as well. We clearly, everything that we have has been public record that we've provided for the submittals and applications and all that. So they've just brought about a bunch of things that were actually already in the public record that they've dug into and looked for. So, but as far as not returning calls and that, it's probably dealing with, there's a lot of moving parts in this project and it's premature for them maybe to make some comments that they're not ready quite yet to make.
Being proactive, would it behoove the mayor and with the council to send out something to the residents saying, this land is part of our growth management area. It's been envisioned for years to at some point come in and be changed out. And we're going to have this public hearing on the 26th. I know that it's on the agenda tonight, but something that go out to residents because it's always better to get in front of these things than just all of a sudden have just.
Certainly it's.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because it's.
I would just say if we do that for this, then that means we do it for every single project that's on the books. And I don't necessarily.
There's not going to be any project any bigger than this.
No, but like Matt said, it's all public information that the newspapers can always go on there and find any of our public information and report on it.
Right.
I don't know that we need to necessarily do any more than we would for any other kind of public hearing type thing. My own opinion, though.
Should we put, maybe, I'm going to go in between me being the great conciliator is.
I know we disagree sometimes.
But is maybe we do put some language and stuff in our website and have a discussion of, because I think there's a real angst in town about we're growing too big and traffic's horrible and you guys are making it worse. Probably, I always think you head off things like that.
I think it's in public, it's on the website, just like every other project that's in the works is my personal opinion.
Just to chime in a little bit, I think you got two dynamics going on here that you got to keep a hold of. Number one, the desire to get information out to the public. Number two, the private sector client that is, like Matt says, feeling their way through both the dynamics of their marketplace and all these different things that they're dealing with. So I think it's a little sensitive there, but I do think we can put on the website a just Reader Digest condensed version of just what's public, what's happened to date. And it's more historical than anything going forward. And I think the thing you got to watch out for is talking about anything in the future.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Because this isn't a new idea.
Well, so, I mean, we do have a lot of planning documents out there, public documents that we went through many, many processes. So if it's a surprise to people, it's because they haven't looked, but I also agree that there is like, we can give them the information and whether they, choose to seek it out or not. I think to Don's point, maybe there is a reminder, if you're interested in some projects around town, here's where you go to look for those. And there's information already on the website. You can go dig and find them if you'd like. And that maybe that's our Facebook and social media posting kind of thing, just to kind of give people an idea that there is this pathway for them to discover the information.
So while all of us non-marketing people discuss this, Kim, we'll let you talk. Yeah, my two, and I heard Jim Matt and stuff, but my two bits is I think of before I ever was in public office and I was very involved in Fort Collins on the things that were going on there. I wouldn't read the agenda for the town council. I mean, I realize it's out there and if someone wants to complain, but I think we've always been a proactive council, a proactive staff. I think having somebody used the word Reader's Digest version of what's going on and calm fears of saying, hey, this isn't brand new stuff. This has been here forever. And now they're finally acting on it.
If we do something like that, can we add the other projects that are also kind of in the works? Because what one person finds important, somebody else might not, but they might say, well, why didn't they share this for, the Timnath Ranch one? And then they're going to get upset because we shared some stuff and not others. So maybe just do an overall of all, maybe some, and I know it's in the packet and I read the packet, but not everybody reads the packet. But to maybe include. Yeah, the article was not specific. The article is
right.
Distinguish it.
Yeah.
And I think this week in Timnath is a perfect platform to bring something up like this, and it can be a one-time thing for this particular situation, and maybe not set precedent for us to do it for every single application.
I would like to see more kind of regular reminders of residents about the development on development's email, because I do think that is a good way of putting information in front of people that is convenient. They don't have to dig through the town website or packets. And because we have so much turnover in our town and new people come in, I think it's just good to really push that out there to make sure people are up to date if they want to be.
Go ahead, Aaron.
This is a bit off topic of what we're talking about here, other than when you brought up the traffic. And as we've all seen, the traffic has been harder at the Harmony intersection with 25 in the mornings because of the closing of Kector Bridge. And I'm guessing people who don't have school-aged children don't realize the impact that bridge had, because that's the direction everybody took their kids, to Preston and to Fossil. Now, everybody, including the people in Windsor, because they can't go up the either frontage road, they have to come into Timnath and go over there. So I think some reminder on our website, if you guys are all agreeable of that, the traffic is worse. And the reason it's worse is because now it's a much more of a congestion point, and this is going to be temporary, albeit not until May.
Great,
But-
great comment.
But I think that just bringing that up so the people that don't have kids understand what the heck is going on.
I think
'Cause
it's a
it
great
changed.
comment. I think it's a great comment. Okay, got your marching orders, Cam? I think we're adjourned if no one has any other comments. I don't think we have an do we do an official adjournment? Okay, so
I move to adjourn.
do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We are adjourned.